What's up, folks? East here, and today we're talking some more Shadowverse 101 basics. Some things I hope that are useful for new players getting into the game, as well as more seasoned players who are maybe just kind of thinking about the game on a deeper level. So today we're focusing on a topic that I like to call the ABCs, right? And that is always be clearing. And that is a thought of how do I get rid of a really big follower on my opponent's board, or how do I deal with really wide boards where there's lots of followers and they've been buffed up a little bit, right? So we're going to cover three important things today. The first is going to be, what do I need to clear? What are my big threats? How do I identify what my threats are? B, the types of threats that exist within Shadowverse or in card games in general, right? And finally, the types of clear, or the types of ways to destroy those followers. So let's hop right into it. Let's take a look at some of the decks we're going to be using today for the explanation. Let's hop right into the game very quickly. And so you can see the first one here is going to be called Always Be Clearing. This is the deck that we're going to be playing today, and we're going to be using to give some examples and show off how to clear opponent's followers. The second deck that we're going to be looking at is going to be the Tier 1 deck online. So that hops right into the first point, and that is, what do I know that my threats are? How do I know that a card is a threat? A couple of ways. My most recommended answer here is to just look online and just look at some of the most powerful decks that exist out there. Because let's be honest, like, everybody's out here net decking, right? They see a good deck online, they see a really good player got like a 15-game win streak, they're gonna try it out. So you take a look at those, like the Tier 1 decks, are really strong decks online. And you know, if you're still not sure, like, even within those decks, what the cards that you should be on the lookout for, what your threats are, you can go on places on like Discord, like the Shadowverse Newbies Discord. You come into my Discord, you can ask, and just ask, so what are the big cards, or what are the threats that I should be worried about for this deck or X deck, right? And then you want to think about the turns that those cards are going to be played. So those two factors, A, what are my threats, and two, when are they going to be played, are going to be the first and foremost thing you need to know about each deck, right? So next, let's take a look at the types of threats that exist within Shadowverse. So we're going to be using here our Tier 1 deck online. We did some net decking. We saw that this deck was really strong. It is the basic version of the Shadowcraft set when you start the game. But for our example, I think for beginners as well as seasoned players, this will be really useful. So let's take a look at the types of threats that exist within Shadowverse. There are three types of threats that exist within the game. The first is what I call boss monsters. These are the really, really big followers that are kind of hard to get over, or they're just really, really strong, have a lot of defense. Some examples of boss monsters might be, for example, Ghostly Rider, who's a 5/5 and is a ward. You have to destroy a ward before you can attack your opponent directly. Angelic Sword Maiden, also a ward, 2/6, super thick, double C's right here. And if she evolves, she becomes a 8/4/8, which is crazy good stat line. So those are what we consider like the really big monsters. Another one would be, for example, Undead King. Undead King, super good because he's not super strong, but once you destroy him, he summons 2 more followers who have decent stat lines at 2/2. So those would be our boss monsters. Let's take a look at another threat, and that is going to be wide boards. So what are wide boards? Let's take a look at this follower here, Apprentice Necromancer. So you can see Apprentice Necromancer doesn't have amazing stat lines, a 2/3 versus something like Ghostly Rider, which is a 5/5, but it has a really good effect where, don't worry about necromancy, but let's say you just summon a zombie. Zombie is a follower that has a 2/2 stat line, so it's 2/3, and then this adds a 2/2 to the board. Let's imagine you play something like Apprentice Necromancer on turn 5. Then you have 2 play points left over to play something like Fighter or Spartawast Soldier, or Spartawast Sergeant, which are 2/2 followers for 2, which basically gives you a 3-follower board where each follower has at least 2 defense. And then Apprentice Necromancer has 3, which is really, really good. So those are what we consider wide boards. So the last threat that I want to talk about are the followers that are left up before the Evo turn. So in Shadowverse, depending on if you're going first or second, you can evolve on turn 4 or 5. When you evolve a follower, their stats get boosted most of the time. So if we take a look at a follower, for example, like Goliath, who on 4, you can play him out. Let's say you can evolve on 4. If you evolve him, he becomes a 5/6. That is a big body on turn 4. Another example here might be, like we talked about before, Angelic Sword Maiden, who becomes a 4/8 on evolve on turn 5, right? Let's imagine you're going first and you can only evolve on turn 5. Angelic Sword Maiden is a great wall to put up, as well as a very strong follower to deal damage. So those are the 3 kinds of threats: wide boards, boss monsters, and the followers that appear before Evo turns. In addition, something to keep in mind, quick hot tip from me, destroy a follower, or destroy all followers on your opponent's side of the board before the Evo turn. Do not let them leave anything up before an Evo turn, because they can use their play points next turn to clear your board, evolve the follower that you left up, and then deal damage face, which would be really bad. So then, now that we've identified our threats, we've identified what the kinds of threats that exist within the game are, let's take a look at the ways that we can clear them. So again, we've got our deck here, always be clearing. The first thing that I want to talk about is Rush or Storm. So Rush, normally when a follower is played, they cannot attack the turn that they're played unless they're evolved. So keep that in mind. Additionally, there's an effect called Rush that says, okay, if you have Rush as an effect, you can attack other followers the turn you're played. One example here is the Mechanized Servant here. You see it has the fanfare effect. If Resonance is active for you, gain Rush. So if you play this and you have this effect called Resonance active, which basically says if you have even number of cards in your deck, then it's Resonance. This is the Portalcraft effect. So, if you have Resonance active, you gain Rush. So you could play like a Mechanized Servant and just run into a 2/2, no problem, right? Another Storm is very similar. Excuse me, before I move on, Storm is very similar, but it allows you to attack either other followers or the opponent directly when they're played. This effect is usually reserved for larger, more expensive followers, so you're probably not going to get it on a really cheap follower, a really low-cost follower, unless you're Swordcraft. Another way that you can clear followers are through effects or spells. Let's take a look here at this spell here, Dimension Cut, which says deal 2 damage to an enemy follower. Super simple. 2 play points, deal 2 damage. If Resonance is active for you, so if you have an even number of cards in your deck, then you can do 4 damage instead, which is really nice. So you probably want to hold on to these for Resonance turns, right? Another example here is going to be Puppeteer Strings, which says put 2 puppets into your hand, deal 1 damage to all enemy followers. 1 damage seems pretty piddly for 4, but it's to all the followers, which is nice. So potentially you can be doing 5 damage across the board. And let's take a look at puppets really quickly. So before we talked about Rush, the Rush effect, puppets are 0 play point followers, which are really great because you don't have to pay anything to play them. You just play them out. They're 1/1, so they're kind of small, but they have the Rush ability, or the Rush effect. So you can use puppets as kind of like your front line to just destroy things on your opponent's side of the board, right? So let's imagine you play Puppeteer Strings. They have 2 2/2s up, right? They have 2 followers who have 2 attack, 2 defense. You play Puppeteer Strings for 4. You reduce their defense to both to 1. And then you have 2 puppets in hand. You can play both those puppets for 0 cost. They have Rush, so you can just run both the puppets into the remaining 2/1 followers, and they're destroyed. You've cleared the board. Puppeteer Strings is a really good card in the base set for just clearing wide boards. Additionally, there are things like effects called Bane. So Bane is an effect where if the follower attacks another follower, they destroy the follower, regardless of how much attack the follower has, how much defense the follower has, whatever. So if you run this into this, they just die. So, for example, Puppeteer has the ability, when you evolve him, you can put a puppet into your hand, and then you give a random puppet in your hand Bane. So you can get a puppet in hand, give it Bane, 0 cost, play it out, destroy anything you want, basically. So really, really good is Bane. The last thing I want to talk about is evolution points, and maybe Puppeteer, we'll go back to him as a great example of that. There are some cards where you can use to evolve and get special effects, for example, Puppeteer, or you can evolve them because they're just really, really big. One example here might be Automaton Knight, so or actually let's use Iron Forge Fighter. For 4, let's say you can evolve on turn 4, if you evolve him, again, remember what I said from the very beginning of this, if you evolve a follower, they can attack the turn that they're evolved. So, even if it's the first turn. So you play Iron Forge Fighter for 4, and then you evolve him, and he can clear something that's a 6 defense or less, which is really, really good. So let's imagine some scenarios or some situations here that we need to cover. So before I talked about the really big threats to from this deck here. For example, the big boss monster, Ghostly Rider. So Ghostly Rider is a 6/5/5. How do we get over Ghostly Rider? So imagine Ghostly Rider gets played. It's definitely going to be on at least turn 6. So for 6, your opponent plays Ghostly Rider. Now it's your turn. How do you clear Ghostly Rider for 6 damage? Really simple way of doing that. You can, let's take a look here. You can do Puppeteer for a really low cost. You can do Puppeteer, evolve him, get the puppet in hand, have it Bane, play the puppet, and then run it into the 5/5 in Ghostly Rider. and that just destroys it outright. Super simple, and you still have at least 4 play points left over to do anything with, or to to build your own board, or to advance your game plan, or what have you. Another example I want to look at is the Apprentice Necromancer. So we talked about the wide boards before. So Apprentice Necromancer, definitely one of those cards that can generate those wide boards. So let's imagine it's turn 5. Your opponent plays Apprentice Necromancer. So there's 3 play points. They have 2 left over. Remember that? But they play Apprentice Necromancer. It summons a zombie for 2/2. And then they use the last remaining play points to summon Fighter. So they have a 2/2. Again, a 2/2 from the zombie here. And then the 2/3 from Apprentice Necromancer. So how do you clear a really wide board like that? So you would take a look at your hand and you say, okay, I'm going to need to use Puppeteer Strings, Puppeteer Strings here for 4. That's going to deal 1 damage to everything. So then I'll have a 2/1, a 2/1, and a 2/2. And then you can use 2 puppets to run in, and you can use 2 puppets here to run them into the remaining 2/1s, and then all you're left with is a 2/2. Here's where things get a little bit dicey. Because it's your turn 5, you don't have enough to do Puppeteer Strings plus something else, right? Because you have 4 play points left, and the rest of the deck is at least 2 play points for the lowest cost follower. So what that means is that you need to, earlier in the game, make sure you are ready for the play of your opponent's Apprentice Necromancer. You can clear the 2/2s, no problem, but the Apprentice Necromancer will stay up, and you need to find a way to clear that. So you say to yourself, okay, what can I do earlier in the game to hold on and to get resources so I can clear that? One example might be, say, okay, maybe I play Well of Destiny earlier on, so I can buff a follower, or maybe I play Toy Soldier, and so I can get a puppet in hand, and then later on I play Automaton Knight to put a puppet in hand as well. So that's really where the rubber meets the road. So easy clears on the turn of are simple, but they're, again, the big threats that you need to watch out for, you need to be aware of, so that you can, A, hold resources to clear those and make sure that those threats are checked whenever they come out. So being able to have the foresight to say, okay, I know this is a threat in my opponent's deck. It usually is. On turn 5, if this happens, I need to be prepared for it. I need to stock some puppets in hand. So that's it. That's our basic tutorial, again, on always be clearing the ABCs of Shadowverse. Again, guys, if you found this video useful, let me know in the comments below. Any mentions of the Discords, I'll put those in the comments below as well, or excuse me, in the description. Again, don't forget to follow the channel, subscribe, whatever it be, hit the bell, all that good stuff. Also, if you like Twitch, I stream on Twitch pretty often, so at least every other day. I'll play some Shadowverse, so you come in there, you can ask questions, just hang out, have a good time. We do a bunch of stuff that's focused on analysis, as well as, just, having fun out there. Again, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you next time.